Here are 5 things that I wish I'd have known sooner before I started my weight loss journey. Welcome back to Body Beyond the Scales, the podcast that gets you stronger and more confident in your body through building better habits. I'm super excited to be back for this episode in a bit of a different location here. We're in the living room, which is newly decorated. And yeah, as we're coming towards the end of 2025, I wanted to do a reflective episode on 5 things that I wish I'd have known sooner when I first started my weight loss journey, but actually that I wish I'd have known about earlier on in my coaching journey as well. I thought these would be useful things for you to hear about, and some of them you'll have heard before, but some of them I think will be new. So yeah, I'm really excited to be doing this one. As I said, bit of a different location. The sofa was delivered this morning. If you've been following the bingo cards, and you're as if you're watching this and you're not just listening to it and you're thinking, Holly, what on earth are you on about a different location? But if you've been following the bingo cards, we've been decorating our living room, and that was one of the goals that we were aiming for. This room has been stripped, painted, all sorts has happened to it. And anyway, the sofa has just been delivered this morning, and I'm really excited about it. It's super comfy. So yeah, it's also significantly warmer up in this room than it is downstairs. We live in a 3-storey house, and as obviously heat rises, so the higher up the house you are, the warmer it gets. So yeah, it's bloody freezing on the first floor, well, the ground floor. So I'm making advantage of the first floor and making sure I'm sat somewhere that's nice and warm. I also have a cup of tea in hand. So yeah, I'm ready for an in-depth chat. So hopefully you are doing well and you are warm. That is what is most important. So let's get started. The first mistake I made then was not understanding the importance of resistance training. And all that means is just lifting weights and improving your muscle mass. It's nothing really that complicated, but we want to make sure that we're doing exercise that allows for you to get stronger, get your bones reinforced, and making sure that you feel good in your body. That's the key thing that we're after. And we really want to make sure that you have the strength to keep doing your daily activities for as long as possible within your life. One thing that's super underrated is the fact that when you are as you age, you are more fragile. If you break a hip, if you fall over and you can't get back up again, or you fall over and you break a hip, your chances of mortality massively increase. So just one of the easiest things that you can do is just make sure that you have strong bones, which you can do through lifting weights, and you can make sure that you have the muscles and the skills to be able to get back up again off the floor. Obviously, if you've got a broken hip, you're probably not getting up off the floor then, but just get up and down off the floor. It's just such a key skill to be able to do, and it's such a good predictor of longevity. So yeah, we really want to make sure that we are lifting weights. But why is it important when it comes to losing weight? Well, when you lose weight, your body is going to get rid of the resources that it doesn't think it needs, because it goes, we're in an energy deficit, we're in a budget cut, we need to get rid of the resources that we're effectively not using. And it goes, we'll get rid of the most expensive stuff first. It's a bit like if you were doing a budget cut, it's why you ring up Sky and find out what Sky packages they've got on offer that are cheaper, because it turns out you don't need Sky Sports, Netflix, and all of the extra things that they seem to offer with it. We all don't need Sky Living or Sky Movies. So it's that time of budget cut when we want to cut costs and we look for the most expensive thing first. So your body will take off muscle if you're not using your muscle. So basically, we want to make sure that you're using that muscle. This is really important as well, because when the more muscle that you have, the more calories that you will burn just at rest. So more muscle is beneficial. So if you've lost weight in the past and you've not done any resistance training, chances are you lost a degree of muscle. So it's really, really, really important that you do the exercises that will promote muscular retention and muscular growth, so that you are not in this position down the line where you've lost weight, but actually what you've lost is a lot of muscle. So yeah, hopefully that has highlighted the importance of resistance training. And that's definitely a mistake that I made at the start, where I didn't know how important resistance training was at the start of my weight loss journey. I was doing something, but I wasn't really following a structured program. So that's my biggest recommendation there, is to do some resistance training where you are lifting weight, but more importantly, following that, or rather as second to that, making sure that you are following some sort of program so that you can progressively overload. Now, progressively overload just means you make things harder over time. So you lift a little bit more weight, you push that little bit harder on your, you push for extra reps, you go for an extra set. But the idea is that it gets progressively harder over time. And that's the key thing that you're aiming for. So as long as you can do that, you'll be in a really, really good position. You don't even need to work out that many times per week. Twice per week in the gym is enough for muscle growth. Once per week should roundabout maintain it, especially if you're a beginner, but twice per week is so doable, especially if you're doing no other exercise. Twice per week in the gym will just work wonders. That's the current recommendations as well from the government, of a minimum of 2 times per week is what we want to be including for general overall health. So if you can get some sort of resistance training in, that would be fantastic. And let me know if you'd like more help with kind of like what to do in the gym. I can make some videos on this, I can make some content on this, so let me know if that is something that you struggle with, is not really knowing what to do in the gym. So yeah, the final point to make on this is that you won't get bulky by accident. I think a lot of people have the fear that like they will start lifting weights and they're going to look like Arnie. You're not going to look like Dwayne Johnson just from lifting a few weights. Like it really is a refined process to look like that. You're not accidentally going to end up looking really, really bulky. If you just want to be making sure that you're lifting weights, you will get definition, and you will probably achieve that toned look that you are after if you start lifting weights. So if I can recommend anything, just lift weights. So yeah, on to mistake number 2 then, and that was eating low protein, or rather for me, it was not prioritizing protein. Now, protein has a few main roles. One of them that you will have heard me talking about before is keeping you fuller for longer. Now, that fullness is so useful, especially if you are someone who has a lot of food noise. I'm someone who experiences a lot of food noise, so having something to help keep me fuller for longer is really, really useful, because it means that I'm less likely to overeat, I'm less likely to overconsume, and I'm less likely to snack. So yeah, it's really, really useful for if you're someone who finds that like you are hungry all the time. Even if you're not someone who's hungry all the time, it will help keep the cravings at bay. So if you do find you get like cravings, then protein is such a useful thing to have. Now, outside of that, protein is also the key building block that your cells need. That includes your muscle cells, your like skeletal cells, your immune cells, your red blood cells. So protein is used for growth and repair. So it will help you grow your muscles, yes, but it will also help like in cell regeneration. So it's really important that we get protein in. And if you've heard of anything like collagen is a type of protein, but it's included in a protein. So it's really important that we get that protein in, because it's really key for so many different aspects of cell growth and repair, and that includes like skin cell growth and repair. So yeah, if you can make sure that you're getting in your protein, that's going to be key for making sure that you are in a good position for building and refreshing your new cells. It will help like optimize your health, but on the flip side of that, it will also help you with building more muscle cells, and that's really what we want. We want to be taking advantage of the key benefits of that protein. So how much protein should you be having? Well, in terms of the general recommendations, we want to be aiming for 1.5 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein per day. If you're doing the calculations, if you can do that quick maths, you might realize that number is quite high if you are currently in a bigger body. To be honest, if you're anything really over 70, 80 kg, if you start doing like the 2.2 side of things, you're talking about like 180 grams of protein per day. That is a heck of a lot of protein. And it's not necessarily that we need you to eat like all of that protein all at once. So what I tend to do is tell people to take their lean body weight or their goal body weight, because often we don't know what our lean body weight is, but we can use our goal body weight, and like go up from there and use that number instead. We don't need to feed your fat mass per se with protein, but we do need to feed your like lean body mass with protein, which is your bones, your muscles, and so on. So it's really important that we get in enough protein that you are able to do this, that you have this covered effectively. So yeah, making sure that you're all over that protein consumption is key. If you are in doubt about any of that, start at 100 grams per day and work your way upwards. Now, mistake number 3 that I made was undereating. I had a habit of going, okay, well, we're dieting, which therefore means that we need to like eat less food. And like that is true. You do need to eat fewer calories, but you don't necessarily need to eat less food. Because what I often find, and I find this quite a lot in my coaching practice now, is that undereating leads to overeating. It leads to snacking and excess consumption. And if we don't track that data, that therefore can lead us with an increase in calories without us even realizing. We end up like compensating with what we end up eating, and it just ends up going down the road where you actually end up consuming more than you want to say that you're eating. So we can often happen consciously, but it can often happen subconsciously as well, that you end up just consuming more food. So if you are in a position where you're under eating, and that might involve things like skipping breakfast, that might include things like eating a really, really small lunch, that might include things like, well, skipping meals in general, or just eating very little throughout the day, you often find that you end up like overeating on an evening. And I like to restrict from using the word binge, because binge is a like clinical word. So I'd much prefer to use the term like overeating. And unless you feel like you are in need of a clinical diagnosis of, say, like a binge eating disorder, I think the best term to use for you is like overeating. So if you are in a position where you're thinking, I do overeat on an evening, which is a behaviour a lot of people do, it's worth just referring to it as overeating, because if it is binge eating disorder, that is a completely different thing, and that would be worth speaking to your doctor about. So if you are finding that you are overeating on an evening, it could be that you are under eating throughout the day. You also tend to find that this can happen in cycles of like through the week. So if we undereat Monday through to Thursday, over Friday, Saturday and Sunday, we often find that this is when we fall off track, and actually we end up eating more when you didn't intend to eat more. It's just that you have ended up in this like huge cycle of all or nothing, and you just end up flip-flopping between the two. So it's really worth considering here is like, are you under eating? And the phrase that I like to think of is diet on as many calories as possible. So once you've worked out your maintenance calories, and I will stick the link to my calorie calculator in the show notes to this, but if you want to like calculate your maintenance calories, you can do that in there. But once you know what your maintenance calories are, you want to have usually about a 500 calorie deficit. If you are in a bigger body, you may be able to afford to do a bigger deficit. If you are in a smaller body, you may need to do a more conservative deficit. But a 500 calorie deficit is just losing around about £1 per week, which is pretty good for most people. Like that is a fine amount of weight loss. So just consider that first off and go, well, how much weight am I trying to lose, and where am I at the moment with my weight loss goals? Like, do I need to be do I need to be going for a more aggressive deficit? Can I go for a more aggressive deficit, or do I need to go for a smaller deficit? Again, diet on as many calories as possible. If you are losing about £1 per week, you are probably in a good position, unless you are in a smaller body and you actually only need to lose less weight than that. The more aggressive the diet is, the more you will experience the side effects of dieting. So it's really important actually for most people that we go for something that's sustainable for the most part. And that usually means that we are tracking everything in a way that like feels good like across the week. And it doesn't necessarily have to be day to day, but what I would say is don't go to extremes. So if you have one day where we're eating 1,000 calories, then like the 5-2 diet, if we have one day where we're eating like 500 calories and then the next day where you're eating whatever you want, like I think that just creates an under-eating to overeating scenario. I definitely found that when I did the 5-2 diet, is that like I underate on the 500 day, and then you ended up just like overeating on the on the other days, because well, you could eat anything and it just didn't really work. So I'd highly recommend that if you do find that you are someone who likes to just cut everything out, don't just cut out, focus on just reducing that deficit in a sustainable way so you're still getting a decent amount of food every single day. Another quick tip, if you do find yourself snacking on an evening, is to make sure that your food is planned out before the end of the day, because we tend to be mentally drained and have decision fatigue by the end of the day. So if we want to make sure we're making the best quality choices, we should probably make those choices earlier on, if not earlier on in the week. So making sure that you make your food choices like ahead of time, even if that's just planning out, you don't have to have prepped the entire lot of food, but just planning that food out is so useful, because it means you'll actually be in a position where you're feeling in control of your food, and you're making like logic-based decisions, not emotional-based decisions, because you're hungry, you're tired, and you can't really be asked to think of anything else. You're much more likely to make better quality decisions by doing that than what you would be if you were to just get home from work, be knackered, and then you're like, let's just order a takeaway. So it's really worth thinking about how can you, if you are finding that you're overeating on an evening, are you undereating elsewhere throughout the day, and can you make decisions ahead of time? And that just sorts everything out, you know? The next mistake that I made was not understanding that routine and structure creates flexibility and freedom. I used to think that if you had structure, it felt like really rigid and it felt like you were just trying to be a bodybuilder, and that didn't allow for you to enjoy life. But actually what I realised is having routine and having structure is really, really useful for actually reducing that decision fatigue. And it makes it a lot easier for you to make better quality decisions as well, because you are making fewer decisions throughout the day. Examples of things that you could do here are to think about like having a few different meals that you have on repeat. What I often advise most of my clients to do is create a list of meals that they cook on their phones, just like literally like a notes app, so that when they do their meal plan, they literally just effectively plug and play. They create a jigsaw piece with their meal plan where they go, okay, well, last week we had this, so this week, we have fajitas. We know fajitas work really well. Let's take the fajitas off the list. Okay, we're having shepherd's pie, we're having lasagna. Like, I'm pulling these things off your list. So you've already got them and you're doing like less thinking over time. And this is where it's about working smarter, not harder. You're probably busy, you're probably exhausted, you're probably spending all of your time doing like a lot of other things. Thinking about food 24/7 probably doesn't need to be on your agenda, and you're probably more likely to make better quality decisions if you're not thinking about food 24/7 and thinking, oh, what's my next meal going to be? So actually having those decisions made ahead of time is really, really useful, and it's something that will help you massively if you find that like you are like constantly fatigued by decisions, and actually you end up making poorer quality decisions like as time goes on. So having a few different meals that you use and having that list is really, really helpful. Another thing that I do is I just have the same breakfast every day. So I usually have my porridge bowl. I will occasionally swap to Weetabix, and if I do, I will make sure that I have that with a protein shake. But that's only if I'm like really just not in the mood for porridge. But I've had my porridge bowl throughout all of summer, probably eating it every day for maybe the last year and a half. Bar like maybe bar being away when I've had Weetabix, because Jules and I often just buy Weetabix and I'll just take some protein shake with me. And then bar like maybe be staying at someone else's house. Other than that, like when we are in routine, I am having my porridge bowl. So like having the same thing for breakfast again just reduces your decision fatigue. It's not, oh, what am I going to have for breakfast today? It's, oh, I'm just having this. It's easy. And I think like a lot of people think that is restrictive, but actually that gives me so much more freedom, because it means that I can use my energy to get more creative with dinners. And that's something that I personally really like to do, because if I was constantly thinking, oh, what am I going to be having for breakfast? Oh, what am I going to be having for lunch? I would just feel so fatigued from that, like from thinking about food all the time. So yeah, that is something I would recommend doing, is having as much structure as possible. I have like 3 lunches that I rotate around. I'll have an omelette. I think I've had an omelette for nearly 7 days straight. I should probably eat something different. But like I'll often have tuna and sweet corn with 2 slices of toast. I will have, I occasionally get salmon in. I like to make sure that I'm getting in my omega-3, so I'll get some smoked salmon in. I sometimes have mackerel for the same reason. I try to eat fatty fish at least twice per week. That doesn't always happen, but that is something else that like I like to make sure that I'm prioritizing for like brain health and like heart health. So yeah, like that is all just worth thinking about, is are you getting in are you making it as easy as possible to get in the foods that you need to get in? And having that structure therefore means that I know I'm getting in the 80% of what I need to get in, and therefore like when I do have chocolate, or someone brings round a surprise croissant or like things like that, or someone brings round birthday cake, I can eat that knowing that I'm already getting in everything that I need to get in. So it's worth like having these like almost like frameworks and templates that you can just plug and play into your life, where you reuse the same ideas like over and over again. Don't be afraid to eat the same lunch 7 days in a row, basically, is what I'm saying. But if you find that boring, have 2 to 3 things that you rotate around. It's not about necessarily, it's about making sure that the structure works for you and like the flexibility works for you, but it doesn't need to be like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel every single day. And finally, the 5th mistake that I made was expecting results too fast. Instead, I should have been focusing on the trend over time, not overnight. Making a change that lasts is about thinking about the data as a whole, not about the individual measurements. Something that I really encourage all of my one-to-one clients to think about, and anyone that's joined the consistency games, is what is the data saying over time? So a lot of the time we'll get hung up on individual measurements. The scales have gone up this morning, or my measurements have gone up this morning. And actually what it's about doing is looking at the trend over like the course of time. I'll often zoom out and look at what's happened over the last 3 months, what's happened over the last 6 months. And I'll make decisions based on that, not based on like the random day that the scales have jumped up because you ate a carb heavy meal yesterday, or your period's due, or you're super stressed. So it's really important that you think about what is the trend over time telling me, and you make decisions based on the trend. Because the way that I like to think about it is you want to think like a scientist. A scientist wouldn't make decisions based on outliers. They'd make decisions on what was correlating, what the trend was saying. They'd make observations and they make judgments based on that, not off like random outliers. So it's really important that we look to see what the trend is saying. So if the trend is suggesting that your weight is going down, even if we have a high measurement this morning, it doesn't matter. And actually it really helps you keep a level level-headed and become more logical with this kind of thing. And I think that's something that's really important, is that like we often, when it comes to weight loss, we make it an emotional experience, but actually we want to make it a logical experience. A scientist wouldn't get upset if the data was up on one of the numbers. They'd just log the data and move on. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to think about your weight loss and this health journey as an experiment, and you are experimenting with the things. You are experimenting how you feel when you increase the amount of steps that you're doing. You're experimenting how you feel when you get out for a walk first thing on a morning. You're experimenting how your life works if you do your gym sessions first thing rather than later on. And one thing that I've really seen from like this round of the consistency games is people seeing it more as an experiment, and that's been so nice to see. There's someone in particular, and if they're listening to this episode, then hello, but they have experimented with when they do their gym session, and they started off doing it on a lunchtime, but it wasn't working on a lunchtime, and then they've experimented with the steps. They were doing those on a lunchtime at one point, and then they swapped it around to a morning, and they've actually found that their morning sessions have been working better, and that's just so good to see, because we want to experiment with this, and it's really important to remember that you're finding what works in this season of your life. You might do another season of your life where, like, I don't know, you change jobs or you have a kid or like whatever, but you can then change and experiment with things and make it work. But the goal is to find out what works best for you and create routine and structure around that, and that is how you have freedom, is by having like structure within everything else and then space for wiggle room. And I think that's probably one of the best things that I ever learned, is like, if you can focus on the trend over time, but you can also have that structure and like flexibility, you're in a good spot. I know that's tying 2 points together, but like I think it's really important that we have that perspective overall. So they're the 5 mistakes that I made when I was losing weight, and 5 mistakes that I potentially helped people avoid, but also like I should have learned sooner, lessons I needed to learn sooner, especially the trend over time. Like, I'd often make decisions at the start of my like coaching, and when I first became a coach, 5 years ago now, like I would often make decisions then like based on individual numbers, or I wouldn't collect the right kind of data. So I want to make sure that I'm giving you the best tools possible. So if you found this useful, please make sure that you give the episode, if you found this useful, please make sure you give us a 5-star rating or review, or if you are on a platform in which you can like, then please make sure you give the episode a like, and if you want to see more content like this, then please make sure that you hit that subscribe button or that follow button. It's really useful for you, because it just means that the episodes pop up straight away. But otherwise, I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the podcast, and I will catch you in the next one.